phones. We wanted you to become aware of what the social work, uh, the career field is looking like right now in the midst of COVID, and provide you with resources regarding the next steps, which could be your limited license and taking the ASWB exam. Many of you may be trying to take that exam before June 30th, before these rules are enforced. So if that is you, you will find today very helpful. We have a great lineup of professionals coming through today to provide you with some very helpful information. So most of you should have received some emails from me regarding resume resources, exam information already, and we'll be using that as a reference. So what I want to do to get it started is just to acknowledge the staff and faculty who I believe are on the call today. And I want to start out with this quote that came to me this morning, or something that I read and it's become true in my life. It says, "The greatest among you will be your servant. The greatest among you will be your servant." And when I think about social work in our profession, we're being trained to be servant leaders, to serve at all costs. That's one of our main values. And that's what all of you either are being trained to do or have been trained to do. And I've recognized that as I've become a professional. I graduated in 2018 from this program. That is held very true to me. And we have staff on this call. We have our academic advisors. We have Naila Burks. We have Jeffrey Jones. We have Sarah Doyle. We have our presenters. We have Vanessa Guattieri on the call as well, and many other staff who will be joining us today. And we have Michaela as well, who will be assisting with any questions you may have in the chat. We'll be putting links to resources in that chat for you, and it should be a good day. In addition to that, before we get started, you have the agenda. I want to introduce you to our next speaker presenter, who is our leader here at the School of Social Work Office of Admissions and Student Services. And she's our leader because she's a great servant, and she serves very hard and sets the example for all of us. So Dr. Anwar Najar Durak, I want to bring you up so that you can provide tips for recent grads.
Thanks so much, Lawrence. I see there was a question in the chat. Someone asked if this is being recorded. So just a reminder, make sure that we are. I remember a couple of students asking that we record because they weren't able to join us due to work or field placement. So I want to take this opportunity to welcome all of you. We know, needless to say, this has been more than challenging year, and has put many of us in a position to ask ourselves perhaps what we're capable of doing. And I think many of you have probably figured out you can do a lot more than you thought you could do, and having to deal with these very difficult times. We're aware, we've heard and spoken with many of you over this past year. We hope that you know that we're here. And part of being here was really thinking about what we can do to help you as you transition from your role as a student to a professional social worker. And so to that end, this was part of why we do these events. We usually have a smaller event like this in December, and then we have even a larger event in March because we have more students that graduate in March. So to that end, when we designed this, we sort of asked ourselves, what would we want to provide students? What would be helpful? And as we did that, I said to everyone, let's think about what would be tips we would want to give students as they think about transitioning to professional practice. And so I listed 10. I don't know if I can Am I able to share my screen? And if not, I can name them. It's okay. Because really, again, today's session is based on what we wanted to suggest to you. So one of the first things that we want students to think about is to stay connected, right? So stay connected to us, obviously to Wayne State University and other individuals as you think about social work and the different social work organizations that you might be a part of. And it is certainly not too early to begin building your social work network. Think about what that is. That can be your student colleagues in your classes, certainly can be individuals that you've been working with in your classes. It can be NASW, it can be us. It can be individuals who provide you with information and resources for possible job opportunities. So start doing that. You'll find, I've spoken to so many students who say that the friendships they make and opportunities they have in the graduate program stay with them their entire lives. We think it's really important for you to create a robust resume and cover letter. In some cases, you might make those specific to different areas that you might be applying for. Understanding your financial aid and next steps. You know, did you apply for loans? What does that mean? You need to think about paperwork. Do you need to fill out something? So that's important, especially as you think about what your needs are going to be post-graduation. Always keep an eye out for opportunities. And some of those might start out as volunteer opportunities. You never know when those will take you to a place or to an opportunity that may become more, may transition into a job opportunity. It's those little connections sometimes that really help you find opportunities that can be really helpful. Partake in professional development courses. One of the things that you'll find is that a lot of organizations like to provide professional development courses for free. When you graduate and you get your license, initially you're not going to need continuing education because you're supposed to be supervised by someone who is a fully licensed social worker. However, it goes without saying, participating in those courses can be extremely helpful because it starts to get you comfortable with learning where you can find free continuing education courses sometimes, and certainly support your learning and development, that you can take those professional development courses and take that content into your supervisory sessions with the person who's supervising you and really talk about development and things that you find helpful, things that you feel like you need to maybe do more of, maybe find out those kinds of things. Today's session, we're going to talk about licensing, and it's important to understand what licensing means, evaluate what the next step is for you. Are you going to stay in Michigan? Are you a Canadian student? Are you going to move out of state? And what does licensing mean, and how do you do it, and what are things you need to be mindful of? What are some of the changes, and how do you keep track of changes so that make sure that you're on track so that there aren't any questions? Many organizations are not going to look at applications unless you have licensure because it's a condition of employment. So it's important to be aware of when you can apply, what and how to apply, and what you need for that process. Taking advantage of supports in new jobs like employee assistance programs, right? I know many of us have attended meetings and we keep talking about self-care. And while that it's easy to say, sometimes it's a lot harder to do. And programs like EAP or other supports in your new jobs become really, really important, especially at times like these. But particularly when you're starting out new, it's helpful to have folks you can go to talk about things, especially if you're struggling. So definitely take advantage of those. And so that goes right into, of course, to do that means you have to prioritize self-care. Prioritizing self-care means that it becomes just as important as everything else you're doing. If we're not healthy, it's hard for us to then talk to clients about being healthy. So really important to make sure that we take advantage of opportunities to do that and to make that to say that we're important, so we need to take time to do that. And lastly, of course, staying in touch with us. We really will continue to make sure that we offer these. And today's sessions cover a lot of these areas. So we want you to start the process to do this. And we'll keep doing more of these. So keep an eye out for opportunities. So with all of that, I'm going to stop because there are people that are going to go into depth in these areas, and I'm going to shift it back to Lawrence Robinson, who can then announce or introduce our first speaker to begin to work on these areas that I just mentioned. So thanks everyone, and again, welcome.
All right. Thank you, Anwar, for providing that information. Definitely is very much needed. So next we're going to move forward, and I want to introduce to you Ms. Vanessa Gualtieri, who's our lead academic writing center coach for the School of Social Work. And she'll be talking to you today about resume and cover letters for social workers. Go ahead, Vanessa. I'll make you a co-host as well.
Thank you. I have to share my screen. Thanks. Good morning. Since I have a limited amount of time, what I would normally do with you is a small exercise that would be picking out errors in a resume and kind of easing into it. But I think what I'll do today is just start with the PowerPoint, and if we have time for questions, we can go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start the slideshow. I want to start by saying that I'm available to all current students and alumni for a semester or two after graduation. So if you're graduating in December, I'll be happy to meet with you probably through the end of the summer. If you're graduating in April, and some of you have met with me already for writing. And so this is another service we provide. So we're going to go through the errors and get down to business. So resumes and cover letters work together to gain the interest of a prospective employer. And they also work together during the interview process. They should always target a specific audience. And this kind of is unpopular with students in the sense that we really have to target and design our resumes and cover letters for specific positions. So we're not writing a main resume and cover letter and then submitting that exact same set to several different organizations. So we want to be specific to our audience, know ourselves, our skills, experience, and accomplishments. That's really important. So one of the things included in the email Lauren sent out earlier is a resume worksheet. I'd like to do this before I actually type out my resume, make sure we have all of our personal information correct, our education information, making sure that once we achieve our limited license, that's put in our resume, and any other trainings or certifications, academic achievements, as well, volunteer experience. So that's included in the email. Okay. So one of the things we want to do, again, is ask, who am I? So we want to reflect on our professional life, our volunteer life, our academic life, our accomplishments, and what populations and settings are going to be an interest to us. This will help us decide what to include in our resume, when to emphasize, and the appropriate terminology. We want to always research our organization. So part of the interview process will include questions about the organization. You want to know the background, the populations they serve, how long they've been in business, if they have other locations. So it's important to know that prior to applying to a job and prior to completing our resume and cover letter. I always tell students to create a main list that contains our experiences and our skills. So if we are attending professional development workshops like Anwar mentioned earlier. We want to keep track of those things, and we want to think of our resume as a living document. So it's a document that will always change. It's always evolving. We're always adding information, and we're also removing information, irrelevant information, outdated information. So we want to look at this document as something that's ever evolving. There are some arguments against placing information such as computer skills and our personal interests and activities and travel on a professional resume. But I want you to think about the position for which you are applying and the skills that are needed for that position. So for example, this is for nursing. I know someone who's a traveling nurse, so she travels to different parts of the country. As a nurse, one of her major interests is traveling and an outdoor life. So that's significant for a position she may be applying for. So it's important she adds that to a resume. For someone applying for a job where that's not part of the job or the position, we may not want to add that information. So again, know the job, know yourself. Lots of different formats for resumes. They include chronological, from present to past. This is the most common, the most familiar. But as you grow in your career, you may have a skills-based resume over time that develops, that focuses more on your skill sets and what you have to offer to an organization. So again, in format and headings, we want to make sure our headings emphasize relevant skills and experience. A clinically focused resume typically begins with education, followed by social work or clinical experience. Other background could be named additional experience or something more specific, such as teaching or research. I also have worked with students who are changing careers, and so they have social work experience and then their legal work experience, or their social work experience and their teaching experience. So again, that's why I think having this main worksheet is really important, because it allows us to write out and really think through our audience and what we're trying to project about ourselves. And again, be very specific and make sure the resume is tailored specifically to you and your skills. For macro level, headings might include human service experience, community outreach experience, administrative experience. So again, you're tailoring this to reflect your skills. I'd like to avoid using templates, which is very unpopular with students. They love templates, but they're very difficult to edit and modify. I had one yesterday that was a little bit tricky with fonts and margins. They may seem easy and smart, but again, if this is an evolving document that changes over time, it might be difficult to modify later. So when we're describing our experiences, this is like the writing part of a resume. We don't like to use personal pronouns and a, and the to achieve a concise style that will be easier and faster for employees to read. Mm-hmm. Why are we avoiding personal pronouns in a resume? It's acceptable for a cover letter, but our language in a resume should be more short, concise, and to the point. So we're not submitting a 17-page resume for a position. It has to be very clear, because what you're doing in the resume stage is getting the attention of a hiring manager or an HR manager. And actually the last point here in this slide is that long explanations are not needed here. You make the connections in the cover letter. We want to use keywords and details that are appropriate for our audience. So again, for clinical positions, we want to use information about your client population, such as diagnoses or presenting issues, age, ethnicity, socioeconomic status. I want to add in this slide, and I'll edit this later to reflect this, is that the 7th edition APA, Chapter 5, focuses on bias-free inclusive language. It's really important that you read this chapter. If you have not, this is available free from the apastyle.org website. They have a page devoted to inclusive language. You want to get comfortable with that, because that's also language you'll be reflecting in your resume. So we are not labeling individuals by their disabilities or their diagnoses, but by themselves individually. We want to use keywords and details that are appropriate to our audience. So for micro level positions, we want to stress skills such as supervising others, program development, community organizing, fundraising, grant writing, budget management. And again, we want to quantify this as much as we can by including the number of people we've supervised, the amount of money we've raised. So that's very important. Quantify as much as possible. We want to stress accomplishments and sequence phrases according to the skills most relevant to our reader. So less relevant information is later on in your resume, or we can omit it completely. It's important to place our contact information at the top. Now I want to edit this by saying we don't have to include our home address. If you'd like to include your area or your location or your county, you can. But I think now it's appropriate to take our street address off of a resume and be sure we have contact information like our phone number, our email address. If you have a LinkedIn account, that's also a place where you can add that link. A LinkedIn account is you want to keep that very professional. You also want to make sure your email address sounds professional and isn't one that maybe you used in high school or college. And then at the top of the resume, lots of students use objectives. I like professional profile better, but it's a brief statement stating the type of position you are seeking. It's very short, concise. And I think that an objective can limit the use of your resume. So using this information in your cover letter, I think is best. So resume sections can include, they're different for everyone depending on their skill set and their education and their background, but a skills profile could be another alternative opening for your resume, but it's optional. Again, it depends on you. Education typically for students and recent graduates, so begin with your Wayne State School of Social Work degree, followed by your previous degrees, your relevant courses, community projects, and your committee work. Foreign language proficiency is very important. I like to put that closer to the top so a hiring manager sees that relatively quickly. Computer skills are important where applicable, so we don't really need that up at the top. That if we're going to add it, goes closer to the bottom. But having skills like using Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, it's pretty accepted now that we're all comfortable with that. So it's not necessary really to put it on a resume. And then any progress toward licensure, that also is included under education for right now. So once you achieve your limited license, we want to make sure that's reflected in your resume. Experience, so categories should be chosen according to the type of position you're seeking and state the specifics of your field placement, especially for clinical resumes. Also include volunteer work or internships. So personal information such as our age, family status, political affiliations, ethnicity are not included on a resume. That's all private information. And again, going back to the personal interests, they're not typically included unless it has a direct connection to the position. So if we are hoping to combine our clinical skills with outdoor education, then of course we want to add those hiking and swimming skills to a resume. Professional activities are very important. So all of your relevant memberships, awards, trainings, conferences, presentations. I want to remind you that in that main document that you're keeping track of, you want to add all of your professional development workshops, any relevant conferences. We are very active during the year. Well, we will be soon when this is all over, but we'll be traveling, attending all these different conferences and workshops, and sometimes we forget what we're doing. So it's important to keep track of those as we're going along so we can add those to our resume later. So again, your resume's presentation will depend on your audience and your experience. If you can fit your resume on one page without crowding it, do so. But resumes for clinical positions, maybe 2 pages or more if you have significant experience. So don't be afraid of a multi-page resume, but if we don't need it, let's try not to do it. We want to make sure our formatting is consistent throughout. So using the margins and headings, caps and bullets consistently is really, really important. Acceptable fonts include Times New Roman, Arial, and Helvetica, 11 or 12 point. Again, proofreading is very important. Another set of eyes, another person, if you need to read it out loud. Again, try that. This is a direct reflection of you. If you're emailing your resume and cover letter, be sure to send them as PDFs labeled with your first and last name to check formatting. Be sure you send them to yourself first. So what happens sometimes is if you're sending or uploading a resume and cover letter to a website and somebody opens it, the formatting might be off. So you want to email it to yourself and maybe 2 friends or family members to see if it looks the same on everybody's computer and everybody's software. So that's really important. And that's having it in PDF form helps as well. So here are some resume examples. This one focuses on experience. It has education. Ensure, and then our social work experience. And this individual has this broken down to social work experience and then related experience with youth that isn't necessarily in social work. So again, this individual's skill set, he has tailored the resume to reflect him, and it's probably for a specific position. The second page of the resume continues with experience and then trainings, conferences, affiliations, and then interests. The interests here have a direct connection to the positions for the position for which he's applying and a direct connection to his social work experience. This is a skills-based resume. It has a summary on top, and you can see this individual has broken down experience into clinical, academic and instruction, and private practice. So this person has more than 15 years of experience in this field. And education really isn't a priority right now because this person has a very significant professional background and a significant list of accomplishments. This one focuses more on education, graduate field work, undergraduate field work, and then other related experience, skills, and community service. Check my time. Okay. Lawrence, if you need me to stop at some point, let me know. Okay, so we're going to move on to cover letter. This is where you actually introduce your resume to an employer. It states why you're writing, how you may have heard of the position, and the highlights, the most relevant skills and experience. You're not regurgitating the resume here. You're really focusing on a couple of different areas where you're connecting your skills to the position and to the organization. So why am I such a good fit for this position, and why am I such a good fit for this organization? Always use a cover letter. Again, research the organization and the position before you submit anything. Explore the website. If you know someone in this organization, maybe talk with them. If you've been referred, please mention their name. My husband actually just did this. He went through this interview process and had been recruited by an individual in that process. So that's important. If you're applying for a position with little description, it's appropriate for you to email or call the organization for further information. That's completely acceptable. However, it might be so that you could be talking to the hiring manager. So be sure you're using your professional language as well. You want to address the letter to a person if you can. Again, if you don't have that, it is appropriate to contact the organization for that information. But if for some reason you can't, you can say, "Dear Director, to whom it may concern," is perfectly acceptable. Business letter format is very important. So you're using your name, address, doesn't have to be specific street address, phone number and email address that you want to block left. Or as a header. So be sure that you're using proper letter block or semi-block format. You always want to write in the active voice. So For example, my field placement at Cass Community Services afforded me the opportunity to, or correct would be, during my placement at Cass Community Services, I provided individual psychotherapy to adolescent substance abuse patients. So again, active voice as much as possible. I would be honored to work at your agency. Really doesn't do much, but saying I would bring these particular skills to your agency, I think does a lot more. And you want to be, again, very specific, very concise. Cover letter is always one page unless you're applying, again, for academic positions, research or fellowships. Avoid long cover letters because you won't be able to keep someone's interest for that long. And keep your paragraphs on the shorter side. At the end of your letter, you want to carve out a path for an interview and your letter with the next step. It's important, or it's appropriate to say, I will contact you next week to schedule a convenient time to meet or to follow up. You may also offer the best way to contact you and mention that you look forward to hearing from the employer. When emailing your resume, be sure to include your an email. We want to use professional language. So, dear Mr. So-and-so, I'm writing to apply for the clinician position advertised on your website. I will be receiving my MSW from Wayne State University this August and would bring strong clinical skills and experience. So professional, short and sweet. Here is a cover letter example that I really like. And this is a recipe, I call it, that I use with students, which is an introductory paragraph. This is who I am, and this is the position for which I am applying and the skills that I will bring to the position. Then the individual goes on to highlight their experience. And what they're doing here is they're linking and making a connection between their experience and how that experience translates into the position that's being offered. The third paragraph is great because it shows that the individual has done research on this organization, knows how it's run and operated, and I think that's really important. And lastly, this individual carves out a position or carves out a path for future communication, which is important. They've done this in one page. This is formal block format for a letter, and this is what I'd like to see students providing prospective hiring managers. References should appear on a separate page, include the name, title, address, and phone number for each and the relationship you have with them. Choose references that you feel will speak highly of your work and your abilities. It could be a field supervisor, instructor, or former employer, and their thoughts on your strength for your new employer and your qualifications. So again, if you can choose references from the human service field, try to do so. You should ask your references what they are prepared to say about you. Make sure that these are individuals you've had pretty recent contact with or are going to be your best choices. Many prospective employers will want to talk with your references by phone, so be sure you have received permission from them to be contacted. So we want to go through our checklist by using action verbs in our resumes, language that creates a clear picture for our employers, prospective employers, keep our descriptions brief. They give a picture of the populations we've served, the social, medical, and psychological issues, and the social work skills we've practiced. Again, being quantitative is super important. In a resume, always use professional language. Be consistent with your formatting, the use of boldface, capitalization, and send a cover letter. Don't use personal pronouns, include personal data, include our photo, list street addresses of our former schools and employers. We don't need that. No grammatical errors or typos, and don't send your resume without a cover letter. You can contact me here at this email address. You can contact Valerie until the end of the semester, the fall semester. If you'd like to schedule an appointment, you can reach out to me on WAMS or feel free to send me an email and I'd be happy to respond. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? No?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
I'm not sure if you mentioned and I just missed it. Is it appropriate to put your the fact that you do have an LLMSW, at the top of your resume, like behind your name?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
thank you.
limited license, I usually place that near education at this point. That may move once you have your license, your permanent license. But I always like to keep that information at the top of the resume.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to throw it back to Lawrence. Thank you, Lawrence.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Vanessa, for your time and providing this information. All right. So that was some really awesome information. Is there any other questions for Vanessa before we move on? We have about 2 minutes till our next speaker comes on. I see some people in the chat have put that information was very helpful. So that is wonderful. So our next presenter is from the Office of Financial Aid. From the Office of Financial Aid, and she has been serving Wayne State University greatly for some time now, and we really appreciate the work that she brings forth as well. And her name is Daisy Cordero. Daisy, are you there?
I'm here. Hello, everybody.
Oh, they're waving at you. Are you able to show your screen, Daisy, or are you going to share a PowerPoint?
I'm going to share. Yes. Okay. So shall we begin?
Go for it.
Okay, here we go. All right. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. You'll have to make your video. Here you go. We can see it now.
Okay, very good. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. This information is regarding the your student loans, past and future. So I'm going to try to be as concise as I can. It's a lot of information, so please bear with me. I only have until 12:45 to do this. So if you have questions, you could always email me. Even though I'm going to put the Student Service Center information at the end of the presentation, maybe Lawrence, you can put my name and my email out there for the students so that they can email me directly if they have questions, please. Thank you.
Yes, we'll do.
Okay, let's begin. Oops. All right. So your money or your life, managing your student loans, and you know how closely our money is related to our lives, right? So that's why I decided to change this presentation a little bit this time. My goal here is for everybody who is listening to get an idea of how to manage your student loans. Those you've borrowed as undergrads and those you will borrow as graduate students, okay? So the topics that we're going to cover are going to be locating your federal student loans, where and how you get that information, repayment plan options, loan forgiveness, loan consolidation, life with loans after school, grace, deferment, and forbearance, defaulted federal loans, and consolidation of federal loans. Now, this is a lot of information, but again, I am available to meet with any of the students who want one-on-one or who have personal questions regarding your own loans. So your loan history is really extremely important because you need to know, it's like a biography. You need to know how much you owe, how much you have borrowed, who is the servicer of your loan, in case you have a, there's a discrepancy in the payment history later on once you graduate and you are in repayment. So this is really important. And the place to find that is the National Database Student Loan System, or NSLDS for short. It's a centralized national database. Everything, every penny you have borrowed, everything is right there, undergrad and grad. And it stores all the information on federal grants, loans. Of course, no alternative loan information is on this database because that is held by the bank or credit union. Those are private loans. It also, like I said, shows you how much aid you've received, displays your current enrollment status, whether you're grad, undergrad, your, freshman, junior, senior, sophomore. It gives you everything. And it displays your future loan eligibility. This is really important because many times we jump into something without knowing what our future eligibility is, and that can cause a problem, especially during the spring, summer semester. If you've used all of your loans between fall and winter, there won't be any spring, summer eligibility. So this is really important to visit this site often. And I added the website, www.nslds.ed.gov. You should visit that. It's really a very neat website. It looks just like that. And it has a ton of information. Your loan servicer is like the bank who manages our mortgages or the people you send your rent payment every month to. Loan servicers are not perfect people, just like we are not perfect people. They make mistakes. The system makes mistakes, and sometimes what you see on NSLDS may be a problem. You need to contact your loan servicer. So it behooves everybody to know who those people are. And they're very kind, all of, from all these services. These people are in contract with their Department of Education. They're very nice people, they're knowledgeable, but things happen. So if you're in repayment and you have sent a double payment and you get a receipt, or NSLDS is showing that you only have sent only one payment, you need to contact your loan servicer and say, hey, in November or December 23rd, I send X amount of money. I doubled my payment, but it's not showing that. And that's really important to me because I want to make sure that, all the money that I have paid is showing and it's cutting into the date that I have. So it's really important to know who these folks are. You may have 2 or 3 loan servicers. Okay, we have the Michigan Guarantee Agency, we may have Nelnet, we may have all Fed Loan. So it depends. They do all the administrative tasks associated with managing a loan on behalf of a lender. But again, you can trust, but please verify. If you're unsure of who your federal student aid loan servicer is, you can look it up at, again, NSLDS. So make sure you keep this in mind. It's really important. We're going to talk a little bit about repayment plan options once you graduate. We have several payment options: the standard, graduated, extended, income sensitive, income contingent, pay as you earn, and income-based repayment. So there are several flavors, and my advice here is, strong advice, is when you receive the email from our office or accounts receivable, if you have Perkins loans that are deferred now, but you need to start paying them 9 months after you graduate. The direct loans or the other federal loans are 6 months after you graduate. You complete exit loan counseling. It's a federal requirement. Please do this. It's really important that everybody who has separated or graduated or is no longer enrolled completes exit loan counseling. But do not complete exit loan counseling if you're still taking at least 6 credits at any semester, or 4 if you're a graduate student, even if it's spring, summer. Don't do this because the government is going to think that you're done and you're not. So then the grace period will start earlier than when it's supposed to start. So make sure you've separated, everything is done, and then you complete the exit loan counseling requirement. The standard plan, this is the most common plan that everybody uses. It just, the government will say, okay, here's your payments, and it's spread over 10 years. That's it. However, none of these payments are set in stone. So if you choose this, let's say the standard payment plan, and something occurs, God forbid, look what's happening now. Many folks have lost their jobs. Please call your servicer immediately and say, look, I just lost my job. I cannot do the standard plan. Actually, if you've lost your job, you'll probably want to do a hardship forbearance, which is wonderful because they stop all payments for a year, and then you revisit and you do it again. And by the way, all interest and payments are frozen right now due to the pandemic. But you could always change the payment plan. You're not, it's not set in stone, and nothing with the federal government set in stone. You could always call them back and make changes to these plans. The benefit of this plan is that, you end up paying your loans faster, because it's a 10-year plan. The extended plan, the loan must be repaid in equal installments, and it's over 25 years. So of course, the interest rates, the longer you take to pay, the more interest you're going to pay. So the best thing to do when you're choosing a plan, or before that, check each plan side by side and see what is more beneficial for you. Graduated plan, loan repayments start out low, but they increase over time, okay? So it's a good plan for young people whose earnings are low, but are expected to increase over time. And the interests, again, are higher because they're giving you a graduated plan where, the payments start low because you're making no money, and then they increase as you begin to pay, to get, to have a wage increase. Income sensitive, payments are initially low, but increase as income rises. So the lender works with borrower to establish a payment schedule that reflects the borrower's current income, what's happening to you right now. And then, they will accommodate changes like with every other plan. So other than the standard plan, all of these plans, the interest just grows a little bit because they're giving you a break on the repayment. Contingent options available to borrowers with federal direct loans, no plus loans for parents on this one. This is for undergraduate students. Payments are based on a combination of the borrower's level of debt and current income. It depends how much you owe in general, okay? Not just student loans, and what you can afford to pay because due to whatever your wages are at that time. Payments can be lower than the monthly interest accruing. And they could also add to the cost of the long-term interest. So in there, embedded in this plan is also an increase in the interest of the loan. The income-based repayment requires monthly payments. They will be based on the income. This is one of the most, other than the standard, this is the next most popular payment plan. The monthly plans may be adjusted annually depending on how much money you're earning, okay? And the maximum repayment period may exceed 10 years, which means that the interest will also be higher. All right, important loan repayment information. The Department of Education will forgive federal loans on paid balances after 25 years of payment. So if we owe $135,000 and we're making payments on the 25th year, the government will forgive our debt. However, the IRS may tax you on the unpaid balance. They usually do. It's not a may. This does happen. So $10,000 to remaining debt, a person on the 25% tax bracket, which we need to know our tax bracket, would have to come up with at least $2,500 in additional taxes that year. But you will be told that you know, the government sends a letter, says, we'll forgive your debt, but you have to pay this. So check with your tax preparer. Okay. This is a very good website because it helps us to use, you know, if you have you want to know the repayment, the monthly payments, it has a repayment estimator. It also divides the loans, the federal family education program loans from the direct loans, the Perkins loans, and they show you how to consolidate your loans. So this is really a good website. Public service loan forgiveness. Everybody loves this program. If we can get it, I don't know of anyone who has already taken advantage of it. And it's at the end of the, you know, where the government says, okay, we forgive your loans. Because it just started not long ago. The public service loan forgiveness program forgives the remaining balance on your direct loans, your federal family education loans. That's it. Nothing on graduate plus loans. And after 120 qualifying monthly payments, and you have to be under the 2 IBR or pay-as-you-go payment plans. This is really important. And the website tells you everything that you need to know about public service loan forgiveness. And you have to be, of course, working full-time for a qualifying employer. And all of that information is very detailed on that website. Something you may want to, you know, just want to look into it because it's something of value. The effective for qualifying direct loan payments made on or after October 1st, 2007 could be grad or undergrad. Loans eligible for forgiveness, like I said, is the federal direct loan, the federal direct plus loans, that's for a parent, and the federal direct consolidation loans. Of course, you have to be employed full-time. And the organization has to be a 501c3 organization or nonprofit, exempt from taxation. And it could be a government, federal, state, or local tribal agency. We would be one, Wayne State, if you're working at Wayne State. You would qualify. And of course, you would have to be full-time, 30 hours or more. And the employer gets to define what that means. Okay. The steps to participate, you can either consolidate a loan, you select your payment plans, only 2. You begin making your payments. 120 months of payments do not have to be consecutive, where in other cases, the repayments have to be consecutive. They give you a break. Maintain records of public service employment history, and that I recommend strongly that you, as well as your employer, maintain your own records because things always happen. And it's always our word against everybody else's, especially when there's a free something involved. So please don't rely just on the employer. Keep your own record. The loan amount forgiven is not treated as taxable income. So you don't have to report that on your taxes. Federal student loan consolidation. You know, a lot of students graduate and the first thing they want to do, even as undergrads, and then they want to consolidate all of their loans, period. I would strongly warn against doing it that way. Now, when you're a graduate student, that may be a little different, but please, 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 before you jump into the consolidation swimming pool, read about it, know about it. It doesn't work well with or for everybody. It depends on your situation. And it's a money mistake. You don't want to make one, okay? I had a student today with a money mistake of almost $10,000, and that was not a good conversation. So it's not a repayment option. What it does is combines all your designated federal student loans into one loan. Please do not combine or consolidate your Perkins loan with direct loans or federal loans. Once you do that, that Perkins loan will become an unsubsidized loan. And The direct loans and federal education loans, the normal student federal loans, have a 6-month grace period. The Perkins has a 9-month grace period. Please don't combine them. And the Perkins payment is only $50 a month. Drop dead, that's it, that's what you're going to pay. The other ones may depend on the plan that you choose and other, and how much money you have borrowed. So please be careful with that. Never consolidate those loans with the Perkins loan with your normal federal student loans. The interest rate is the weighted average of the rates on the loans being consolidated, rounded up to the nearest 1/8 of 1%. That means, I'll tell you what that means in a minute, 120 to 300 month repayment term. Longer terms means increased interest paid. And you can prepay this without penalty. There was a penalty for prepayment about 15 years ago, and the financial aid community went in an uproar because how could you, penalize people who want to pay you, give you money, take it and run for the hills. So they've changed that, okay? And you can change the federal approved repayment plans annually, going between 2. Depends on, how the situation is in your life at that time. Okay, the pros: reduce monthly loan payments, but increases the monthly cash flow also, but increases the total cost of the debt. So that's why we have to compare. Single statement billing, and then take advantage of fixed interest rate, which is a good thing. And you can also take advantage of the public service loan forgiveness. So there are some benefits, just so that you know what they are, okay? The cons may be you may lose the federal student loan benefits forgiveness options, grace period, some deferment options, some loan consolidation options, and lender benefits vary. Check with your lender. Those people who are managing your loans, be careful. Always check with your lender. Grace deferment and forbearance. Grace is 6 to 9 months post-enrollment, no payments required. Deferment temporarily stops repayment. Forbearance temporarily stops or reduces payment. By the way, like I mentioned before, financial stress in your home, you lose your job, God forbid, your partner loses their job, etc. Please contact your servicer. They're so good at helping students when things like this happen. Life happens, and the Department of Education is very conscious of that. So please, please never stop paying the loans without letting somebody know. You never, ever want these loans to go in default. That is a horrible experience. You don't want to go there, okay? So just keep the servicers updated on your situation. You don't have to get personal or detailed. Just say, look, I lost my job, whatever, as per the pandemic now, and things are happening. I can't make my payments. What do I do? They will recommend a forbearance. Just keep them appraised of what's happening, please. Information about the grace periods. Does loan have a grace period? Yes. The Stafford Perkins loans, the direct loans, the Grad Plus loan, no. Repayment begins after 9 months. This is all I have said to you before in a little summary, okay? So the Grad Plus loans are tricky, and a lot of social work students have to borrow that because for the life of me, I don't understand why, when a student is in an accelerated program, taking all those credits, the government cannot increase those loans to cover that. Same thing with the law school students. I don't understand that, but that's the way it is. So, but over here, there's a little asterisk for Grad Plus loans taken on or after July 1st, 2008, and in-school deferment is automatically placed on these loans for the first 6 months after graduation. So it's not as bad as it sounds, okay? Deferment types, we have in-school deferment, which all of you have at this point. You have to be at least half-time. Education-related graduate fellowship programs, full-time. Rehabilitation training programs, you have to be full-time. Unemployment is a big one. Economic hardship. Military, if you have to take off to do military service. Post-active duty. and post-enrollment grad plus only for the post-enrollment deferment. The forbearance, responsible, you have to be responsible for all accrued interest on this one. Sometimes, not now due to the pandemic, but normally the forbearance stops payments cold. You would be responsible for the interest, which could be like $10 a month, $15 a month, it depends, okay? So it's something you really should look into it if you need it. The student must request the forbearance. Nobody's going to knock on your door and offer it to you. So you have to call your servicer and discuss this. You must provide all requested documentation. If it is a financial or economical hardship, you have to submit 1040s, personal statements, what happened, employer, yep, I'm not working anymore, a letter from the employer, and also mandatory forbearance may be available depending on the situation. So just, you know, for this, like everything else we have to do, we have documentation that we have to submit, and it has to be all in order and clear, because the federal government doesn't, you know, if they get an application and it doesn't have all the documentation, they're liable to deny it just because of that. But they're pretty good about not doing that. You consolidate all federal student loans from different sources into one big loan. You may have lower payment. This is just a summary. Lower monthly payments, which remember, lower monthly payments equals to more interest. Repayment period is extended, pay more interest over the increased life of the loan. And consolidation loans can be paid back using one of the repayment plans. I already said that. Do not consolidate if loans are close to final payments. Please don't do that. I've had students who have done that, and I'm calling them on the phone saying, why did you do that? Because it changes the entire panorama of what your loan history looks like. Do not consolidate loans while in school. Please don't do that unless it's necessary to clear payments or defaults. Rules on how new interest rate is calculated changes all the time. You need to consider these things before you consolidate. How will the interest rate be calculated? Should you exclude some loans from consolidations, like the Perkins loan? Will consolidating federal student loans get a better or worse interest rate? Usually it's higher, but it depends. Can loans be consolidated more than once? I wouldn't do it more than once, but you could. Can loans be, or a loan be consolidated via private lender or federal government? Always federal government, never a private lender. If given a choice, which consolidation plan is best for you? If subsidized and unsubsidized loans are consolidated together, will this affect the ability to have the government defer the interest on the subsidized loan if returning to school at least half time? And you know, when you have questions, please don't do anything until you check either with the financial aid office or preferred the servicer, the loan servicer. They're really good about walking you through this the process. Here's the interest. The simple, that's what they call a simple interest. The simple daily interest means that the interest does not compound unless there's a specific reason for it to do so. The daily, in simply daily interest means that the interest accrues every day. And some of our loans, that's, you know, that's how it works when you consolidate. So if you know, have a $10,000 loan with interest of 4.66, which is usually the interest on these loans, there it is. So interest rate divided by the days of the year times outstanding principal balance. So there it is, $1.27 in essence. So it's not as horrible as it looks. And the reason why I put that there is because if you do a forbearance and you have to pay interest, that's what you'll have to pay. It's not horrible. So if you need to do a forbearance, please talk to your servicer. Do not stop making payments on your loans, okay? Okay, and then that's repeated. Okay, so I'm at the end of the presentation. Are there any questions about your loans and how to manage your loans at this time?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
I put it in the chat box. For students who are disabled, are they able to discharge their loans?
Well, that's also a process. A wonderful question. I love these questions.
If you're totally permanently disabled?
Yes, you have to apply for a total and permanent disability. You need a ton of documentation from your doctor, which then says you can never work. You cannot be employed, okay? You cannot be gainfully employed. That's the trick. Now, does that mean that you can work 2 or 3 hours or 6 hours? Maybe you can, but you have to ask the Department of Education about this.
The website indicated that you can't make more earned income is how it titled.
Exactly. That is
over
exactly
the poverty line, which
that
for
is
people, I think was like $16,000.
exactly the same. Exactly. And so I have students who have done forbearance. They're working very part-time and careful not to go over that. And of course, you can't borrow loans ever again. If you do, the future loans can never be discharged again. They'll give you what used to happen before is when you discharge loans and then you borrowed again, they would activate all the loans that you had discharged. They stopped doing that, thank God. But that means that any future loan you can never discharge unless your condition gets really bad and you can't work even part-time. But the answer is yes to your question, yes. Just be careful if anybody's going to do this, that you don't go over that poverty line because, and they'll be watching for that, by the way, because you have to check with the Department of Education on a yearly basis and then send them information. And then once you're permanently discharged, I think it's every 3 years. So yeah, the answer is yes.
3 years. So for 3 years, you would be monitored to make sure
Yes.
that you don't go over those limits.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're very, very welcome. Any other question?
Hey, Dave, I think we have 2 more in the chat. One was, does WSU employment fall into the student loan forgiveness?
Yes, we're a nonprofit. Yes, that is true.
And of course, we have, can students contact you for assistance to review their loans and figure out the best payment option? Yes,
you may do that. And you did put my information out there, Lawrence?
Yes.
Yes, please do. Send me an email ahead of time and then we'll set up a time to meet and we'll go through everything and I'll try to answer all the questions. What I do not know, I will research and get back with you on that. So, yes.
Right. We also had Dwayne, he put in the chat some resources that they have to help repay back student loans and calculate.
Yeah, that's on the national database. It's all in there. Yes, thank you. That's great.
Well, thank you. We're gonna end it there.
Okay.
This presentation. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome
for providing this information. Just so grateful for that. So grateful for that.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, and have a good day. And if you need anything, please contact me. Thank you.
Right. So next, we're going to move forward. We're going to move forward, and our next speaker is Mr. Dwayne Brejat, and he is going to talk about licensure in the time of COVID, and he's going to talk about the limited license MSW application process, as well as the ASWB exam preparation. And Dwayne is representing, he's a macro social worker licensed, and he serves as the Director of Membership Services and Development for the National Association of Social Workers, the Michigan chapter. So Dwayne, we're glad to have you here today, and you can go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Lawrence, and hello, everyone. It's good to see some familiar faces on here. I see Sarah on there. Caitlin, I love your hair. Hey, Anwar. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you today about the super fun topic of social work licensure and your exam. So we're going to talk kind of about those real things that are coming up probably pretty shortly for most of you. And if you wouldn't mind typing in when your anticipated graduation date is in the chat box, that would just help give me a little bit of sense of the urgency for some of this. I don't know if you're all on the same timeline, but that will be helpful. Let me just pull up my screen. All right, so we're going to talk about the licensure process today. As Lawrence mentioned, I am a macro licensed social worker. I graduated in 2012 with my MSW. My MSW is from Michigan. I was focused on policy and evaluation. I thought I'd be doing lobbying work after graduation, but ended up at this fabulous role at NASW and have been there for 8 years now. But I'm one of them crazy macro licensed folks, and I'm guessing there's probably a few of you on this call as well today. And we'll talk kind of about what that process looks like for all of you. All right, so it looks like we've got a couple December folks and some May folks. Okay, that's helpful. And some folks who've already graduated in the past. So this particular piece may or may not be relevant to the folks who have already graduated. If you already have your limited license, the part that might be helpful is the exam piece of it, but we'll run through everything from the process to getting your limited license to the cost of everything to some things as it relates to the ASWB exam, and then we'll have some time for hopefully a couple of sample questions at the end. So just a little brief thing about NASW, if you're not familiar with us, we're the largest organization for social workers on the planet. So one of the things that I always like to say to students is, you know, half of the title you've chosen for the rest of your professional career is social. So I know for me as an introvert, that sometimes can be anxiety producing, but really what that means for us is we just have to be connected and resourced. And as social workers, one of the easiest ways to get connected is within our field. There are a lot of social workers across the state of Michigan and nationally, and as a student, this is a really good time to start expanding your social work bubble right now, especially if you're graduating in April or May. You have a few more months to really expand beyond your Wayne State bubble, because we have 28,000 roughly licensed social workers in Michigan alone, and about 6,500 social work students. So I think everybody on here is an MSW level student. We have 2,500 MSW level students in Michigan alone. So one of the questions to think about is, okay, I'm getting close to graduation. How many students outside of Wayne State School of Social Work do I know? And if the answer in your brain is 0, that's okay, but that means you've got a little bit of time to change that before we get to graduation, because very soon those folks are going to be your colleagues, those are going to be your advocacy partners, those are going to be folks who find you jobs. And so the more you can expand your social work network, the better it's going to be post-graduation. It's going to make that transition much easier for you. Because especially when we talk about jobs, when you hear from social workers about how did you get your job or where did you find your job, for the most part, people don't tell you I went online and searched Indeed. It's almost always I had a colleague that recommended me to this position, or one of my social work MSW friends saw this posting or at their organization knew that this was opening up and thought I would be a great fit for it. And that's really true for a lot of the field, is we get those positions because of who we know, because of that social aspect in social work. And I know that's true for my position at NASW. When I was in my MSW cohort and we were nearing graduation, probably about this time of year, when I was about to graduate in the spring, one of my friends basically came up to me. She's like, Dwayne, this position's open up at NASW. It's your job. You need to apply for it. And I was like, I'm kind of done with Michigan. I'm ready to move to a different place. But I'll look at it, right? And so I looked at it and I was like, oh, yep, that's me. I guess I'm staying in Michigan for a while, assuming they give me the job, right, and the interview goes well. But, you know, sometimes people see those things in you before you do, and they'll see those experiences open up. So just, you know, expanding that network as much as possible. So one way to do that is by joining some sort of organization. It doesn't have to be NASW. There are other social work organizations. We're the largest globally, about 115,000 members across the world. About 20,000 of those are student members. And when you join, you get a membership into the national chapter and into a state chapter. So if anybody is planning on moving after graduation, as we talk about licensure, that's also really critical because the licensure process is going to be a little bit different depending on what state you live in, or if you move at some point throughout your licensure process. So you can connect with the NASW chapter in that state as you plan to move. For the most part, what I talk about today is going to be pretty universal. There's going to be some sort of application. You'll have to get fingerprinted. You'll have to take a test. But the specific how much, the when and where, the letters after your name, all of those things might vary a little bit depending on which state you end up moving into. So the other things that we help provide as an organization is lots of news and information. If you're already a member, you probably get emails from me all the time. You may not have seen my face before, but you've seen my name probably. This last year has been tons of advocacy efforts, whether it's political organizing, specific legislative stuff. Here in Michigan, we were working on getting all of the water shut-offs from not happening in Detroit area, and we know that that just finally happened, I think, yesterday, so we're really happy about that. Career resources, lots of training and education, lots of good stuff. But I'm here to talk to you about licensure specifically, so let's go ahead and get into it. And feel free to ask questions in the chat box. We'll have hopefully some time to get through all of your questions today. So in Michigan, we were the second to last state in the United States to get professional licensing, and it didn't happen until 2005 when our law was enacted. And so what it did is it gave us three things here in Michigan. It gave us the actual license that allows you to practice as a social worker. It gave us a scope of practice, which kind of defines what we're able to do as a field. And then it gave us title protection. So title protection means that in order to call yourself or work as a social worker in Michigan, you have to have a degree in social work and a license in social work. So this is actually an advocacy tool that you can all bring back to your field placements or into your general lives now, because you may know people who call themselves social workers who you know don't have a degree in social work or aren't licensed in social work. That's actually potentially a felony misrepresentation. And so part of what we want to do as a field across the board is to just call that behavior out because it's inappropriate and it misrepresents our field as a whole. And so what I always recommend to folks is you can blame it on Dwayne. Oh, well, that's this webinar with NASW. And did you know it's actually illegal to be calling yourself a social worker? Even if you have an MSW or VSW degree, you can't use that title unless you're licensed, at least in Michigan. And that'd be like somebody who you know, went to med school but didn't pass their boards and isn't licensed calling himself a practicing doctor or trying to practice being a medical doctor. Same sort of thing. You all will be licensed health professionals in a matter of, some of you, weeks, some of you, it may be a few more months. So in Michigan, there's a couple things that you all want to ask yourself. You're not BSW students, so you don't really have to answer that first one. But the second one is, are you staying in Michigan? And if not, like I had mentioned earlier, just make sure you know what the specific licensure rules are in the state you plan to move to. And if you end up moving in the middle of your licensure process, you'll just want to check in with that particular state's licensing board to know what that process looks like to switch over to whatever they require, because it does vary a little bit state to state. In Michigan, we have three license types. You all are really in the middle one. You are in the LMSW or the LLMSW category since you all are graduating with your master's degree. And so what the letters are that you want right after your name here soon is LLMSW. You want your Limited License Master of Social Work. In Michigan, we have two options for that, either the clinical version or the macro designation. And so when you're applying, you'll just choose that on your application, and that will also then dictate which exam you can sit for. And so once you get your limited license, how you will actually list that on your credentials, whether that's in your signature line of your email or on your cover letter or resume, is you will have LLMSW-clinical or -macro. And you should have that designation listed because it tells an employer or a client what legally you're able to do, because that's your designation, right? Like a macro person should not be doing diagnosis of somebody, right? And so there is some differences between what the license types can do. You can get both license types. We'll talk about how to do that near the end of the session, but you'll first want to add those letters as quickly as you can after graduation. So I have put the licensure process into 6 steps. In the Google Drive that was sent out, there's a one-pager on these steps if you need it. You don't really need this whole PowerPoint. That one-pager should do it for you. The first step is what we're doing here today, is just learning the process. Who are the key players? Who do you need to know during this process? In Michigan, there are 3 key players. There's LARA. That's the Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Office through the state of Michigan. LARA is your go-to person. They are the one who you will apply for your license with. You'll go to their website, michigan.gov/LARA, or you can just type in Google social work LARA, and that will bring up their page. You will physically print off the application. It's still, you have to mail it in still. You will print that off, and then LARA will process that, and you will get your limited license in the mail. But if your address changes, if your name changes, that all has to go through LARA. NASW, we are the education, we are the advocates, we get people to sit on the board of social work. So kind of what I'm doing here today. We don't actually handle your license at all. That's all done through the state of Michigan. And then the third key player is ASWB. That is the Association of Social Work Boards. ASWB, you kind of want that to be a quick relationship. That's your exam. So you want to hopefully be done with that at one time and as quickly as possible. We'll talk about the ASWB exam. I know there's some questions around changes happening in the middle of next year, and those of you graduating in the spring, how that's going to impact you. We will get to that in a little bit. So after today, the next step is to get to graduation. So if you're graduating in December, probably what this means is you are going to want to mail in your limited license application like immediately. So what I always recommend students do is about 2 weeks before graduation, mail in your licensure application. Because what happens is both in December and in May, you have large graduations of social work students across the state. Those are the 2 primary times where social work students graduate. And in each cohort, there's probably about 1,500 to 2,000 students that graduate at each time. And so that means a good chunk of those are also going to be applying for their licenses at the same time as you. And so usually 2 weeks is a good time to get that application mailed in. It's going to take the state probably 3 to 5 weeks to process it anyway. So by the time that they've processed your application, you will have graduated and that will be done. But really what that application process looks like is you're going to go to the LARA website, like I had mentioned, and you're going to print off that application. You're going to choose limited license, clinical or macro, and you're going to mail that back with a money order or cashier check for $43.20. So you're going to send that into the mail, wait basically until LARA processes it, and then you will get a letter back in the mail saying we've received your application, we've created an online account for you, you are now eligible to have your fingerprints taken and have your transcripts sent. Only once you receive that letter back from LARA that says that you have had that account created can you have those next 2 pieces completed. So don't go get fingerprinted immediately. You have to wait until they actually have some system to put those in. What will happen when you get that letter is they'll also say, here is a login to your account. So now you can check to make sure the rest of the steps happen. And here's a link to go get where you can get your fingerprints taken. If you've got, I see there's a question about fingerprinting. If you've gotten fingerprinting done before, you generally, yes, have to have your fingerprinting taken again. So if you've gotten fingerprinted for a job recently, the only people that may be exempt from this is if you have your LBSW or LBSW, you should call LARA to verify to see if they need you to have your fingerprints redone again. But if it's for an employer, you still would have to get it redone. So that's going to be roughly $75 to get your fingerprints taken. And then you have to have Wayne State email in your transcripts to LARA. The nice thing about fingerprinting is that agency will send your fingerprints right to the state. You don't have to worry about doing that. And same thing with your transcripts is Wayne will send those directly over to LARA on your behalf. I don't know specifically how Wayne works, but I'm guessing it happens through your registrar's office. I don't know if Lawrence or anyone else knows where students specifically request that, but it's probably an online request, and you can put in an email where you need to have that sent. Does anybody have any sense where that happens through Wayne?
Sorry, Dwayne, did you say transcripts?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they can request that via their Academica account, or they can email transcripts at wayne.edu to request transcripts to be sent as well.
Great. And do you know if that costs anything?
No,
Let's see.
it does
No,
not.
they don't.
Great. Great. That's a good answer. Thank you, Anwar. No, we always want no when money is concerned. So, you know, as you can see, we're going to be directly talking about money as it relates to licensure process because it's real. So your transcripts don't cost anything for you to get sent, which is wonderful. But sometimes that can be the holdup for your licensure process, right? Because, you know, final grades are due usually a couple of weeks or a week after exams. And then final transcripts don't usually get wrapped up until a couple of weeks after grades are done. And so you may be waiting a week or two, or maybe even 3 after you've gotten your application sent in to have your transcripts finalized. And so that may be the holdup on you getting your limited license. If that's the case, what I recommend is just being kind of transparent in your emails to an organization that you're applying for, or in your cover letter to say, you know, I'm graduating from Wayne State in May of 2021. I've applied for my limited license or plan to apply for my limited license. By the time I accept this position or I'm interviewed for this position, I should have my limited license, right? Because really the goal, especially if you're going into clinical social work, is to get you into the interview door. And sometimes you just have to be a little bit more upfront, especially as a new social worker, because many clinical jobs will not even interview you until you have those letters after your name, because that's how they would bill potentially you once you can get there. So just being transparent once you're getting ready to apply for jobs and just being upfront with those organizations around that. So these 3 things are going to be those very first steps. You're going to apply, 4320, you're going to get your fingerprints taken and have your transcript sent. Any questions about this step in the process?
So if we're graduating in May, when should we plan to do that?
May, so whenever your graduation date is, I would just put in your calendar 2 weeks ahead of that.
Okay, thanks.
So the other tip I want to give around this process is how you may be able to get some of this for free. I know that when I was a new graduate, any money that was out of my pocket was a lot of money. And that may be the case for a lot of you too. So this initial step is about $115 between the application and the fingerprinting. So there are a couple of potential strategies, and this is not going to work for everybody, but I always like to throw them out there to get thinking about it. So one is your internship wanting to hire you after graduation? These are really good questions to be asking now. Even if not, this is good stuff to ask your supervisors, like, what is the process if you hire a new social worker? How does the agency support your new staff, whether that's financially or with continuing education? Do you need additional credentials to start in this position? But does the organization reimburse or pay for the licensure process, right? Especially if you've already been interning there. Clearly, they are interested in you. They know your work ethic. You've been there in a crazy time of the world. So $115 probably isn't going to be a deal breaker to get you in the door. But as a new social worker, $115 might be a huge hit out of your own pocket. So I always recommend, especially if you're at that negotiation table or will be at the end of your placement, assuming you want to work there, is that these are really important questions to be thinking about asking there. Same thing as if you're offered a job that's not your internship, right? This isn't the first thing you want to ask during the interview process, but when they get to that stage where we're interested in hiring you, we'd like to talk to you about salary and benefits, this is a sort of topic that you absolutely want to talk about in there and know yes or no. It may be a deal breaker or not where you want to get. That I think about as it relates to to speak. Again, this is not going to be fit for everybody. If you were having some sort of a graduation celebration, I know that's like virtual right now. I know when I was graduating, a lot of my family was graduating for. So
Hey, Dwayne.
You're the first generation. Yeah.
Dwayne, you're breaking up a little bit.
Sorry,
Still a little blurry.
I can move a little bit. I'm using a phone. But...
Still staticky.
All right, 1 second.
Other words, choppy. I'll say that. It's still choppy. Are you there, Dwayne?
Can you hear me? I switched over to computer audio.
Still choppy.
One thing you may be able to try is to take, if you have other devices around you on Wi-Fi, to turn the Wi-Fi off temporarily if you have that going on there.
All right, I'm just going to switch to a different method.
All right, we're gonna give Dwayne a second or two or a couple minutes to get situated with his audio. Let's see who all is still on. Change the view. Okay. All right, I do want to put in this plug. Dwayne will be giving some exam questions today toward the end of his presentation. And I don't know if you can see this, but we'll be giving away prizes for those who answer the question first and can put it into the chat. This is the ASWB Guide to Social Work Exam. So this booklet has a lot of information about the exam to start preparing for it. So we're gonna give two possible.
All right, I'm back, I think.
And Dwayne is back. All right.
But I like the idea of a giveaway. So sorry about that, everyone. Hooray for virtual world, where nothing works as you think it's going to. Thanks for being flexible with that. So the other thing I was just saying about potential ways to get this process for free is, I know for me, when I was nearing graduation, I had a lot of family saying, you know, we're so proud of you. You're a first generation college grad in the family. We want to get you something for graduation. What would you want? All right. And my brain at that time was like, cash, please give me money. Because that's what I needed as a new person. But really, there's some better ways to reframe that. Potentially, if you've got folks in your life that may be able to help you out a little bit, is, you know, sponsor my initial licensure application. You know, will you pay? I love the word sponsor because I think it resonates with people. Sponsor my fingerprinting, sponsor my membership in NASW, you know, because for a couple of people, a couple of family members can chip in $20, you know, that's going to save you a good chunk of money at the beginning of your professional career and really get you started as you start your social work journey. So I know that's not an option for everybody, but if possible, I always recommend that as a option for folks. If you can, get the employer to pay for it first. If not, if there are other people in your life that may be able to help assist. I'm not going to go too much into the human trafficking piece, but if you have questions about that requirement, I put a flyer in the handout just because, you know, right now all licensed health professionals have to do a human trafficking training. Likely in the next year, that will be a continuing education requirement, not just a training requirement. So just be on the lookout from NASW and probably the licensing department around that particular change, but know that probably within your first year of your limited license renewal, you will be expected to do a human trafficking training. But your first steps, again, are to apply, to get your fingerprints taken, and have your transcript sent. The next steps after that is you will get your limited license in the mail. It will be, you'll get a certificate about that big plus a wallet card. And once you get that, basically it means that you can start collecting your hours. What you will want to do, so once you sent in that initial application to Laura, you will get that login for their website, which you can go then track to see if your fingerprints have been sent, if your transcripts have been received. But I would check that like every day once you've asked for your transcripts to be sent, because likely what will happen is you will see that you will have gotten your limited license approved through the state before you get the paper version in the mail. And it may be a week or two before you get the paper version in the mail. And so as soon as you see that you have your limited license through the state, you can change and add that credential everywhere. And add it to your resume, add it to your signature line, add it to your LinkedIn profile. You know, wherever you have social work stuff, you want to make sure that those letters are after your name. So LLMSW Clinical, LLMSW Macro. And then once you have that, you can start this process. So this is going from your limited license to your full license. And that's really 3 steps at the end of the day. It's going to be working under supervision and passing your exam. Jewel, I love your dog. That's another bonus of COVID meetings, as we get to see animals. But you're going to be working while you're under supervision and passing your exam. So there are some details to that, but that's going to be like in your brain, you want to break it down as simple as possible. What does work mean? It's 4,000 hours. So if you're working full time, that's going to take you 2 years of full-time employment. Work can be paid and or volunteer. So if you are working for 20 hours a week at a paid social work position and you're volunteering 20 hours a week in a social work sort of a position, you can combine those and then you have that 40 hours a week, as long as you're still under supervision by an LMSW. Work just has to be some sort of social work. So it can be direct clinical practice, it can be doing paperwork, it can be attending trainings or continuing education, it can be doing policy and advocacy work. You know, social workers do a little bit of everything all the time. So as long as it's directly related to what you're doing in your capacity, it can count towards your experience. If you are in a non-traditional setting and you're not sure if the work that you're doing can count towards hours, you can always call Laura, and they have a scope of practice expert there who can verify those particular experiences. Because we know that social workers do work in a hodgepodge of sort of settings. So while you're working, you have to be doing that under direct supervision. Oh, I guess it doesn't have to be direct supervision. It has to be under supervision by an LMSW. So if you are going for the clinical designation, your supervisor has to have the clinical designation. If you're going for the macro designation, they have to have the macro designation. Really, you should be looking at this sort of supervision as a professional mentor. So I know for many of you, probably at your internships or maybe even in your outside jobs, you may have somebody at your agency whose job title is supervisor. And that person may just review your paperwork or go over cases with you on a weekly basis. That is not necessarily this person. This supervisor should be talking to you about your leadership in an organization. How do you move up the chain? How do you negotiate higher salaries? How do you navigate ethical dilemmas? What sort of advocacy arenas can be brought into the work that you're doing? So this sort of licensure supervision really should be encompassing lots of social work, not just what you're doing with your client that particular day or that week. So you want to make sure that this person is somebody who you can learn from, that is also connected in the field of social work, and then has some expertise in the particular area that you're working in. Supervision does not have to happen on site. So we know that many social workers are the only social worker at their job, or they may only have a couple of social workers, or the fully licensed people may be at capacity and not able to have supervision or offer supervision. So you may have to contract somebody out separately or find somebody who's not at your particular agency. That's perfectly fine as long as they're fully licensed. I know I do supervision for limited licensed social workers, macro social workers in the Lansing area who don't have any other social workers at their agencies that they work for. And so we are now meeting virtually every week. You have to do 1 hour per week as long as it takes you to get your 4,000 hours. So if you're doing 2 years full-time employment and counting those hours, it's going to take you roughly 104 hours of supervision to get those 4,000 hours complete. Half of those supervision hours can be group supervision. The other half needs to be individual or one-on-one. You can do it through phone. You, in theory, can do it in person when we're doing that. You can do it through Skype. You can do it through FaceTime. Anything that's a live format. Obviously, you want to be careful with any sort of HIPAA information, making sure you're not giving away client information, especially if you're in a public space. But as long as the sessions are happening live, there's no, at least now, limit on the format that you can use. Supervision is really critical in terms of thinking about pricing for you as well, because if your organization provides it, then it's free, right? I'm guessing many of you are interning at places where there are supervisors available for folks, right? I see some heads nodding. So you may know that this already happens for their limited license employees. Maybe they meet weekly for some group supervision or every other week for some group supervision, and then people meet individually for other supervision. But if you don't have somebody at your agency, then you would need to work out that arrangement in a contractual way. I know with my limited licensees, what we did is we developed a contract when we first started meeting, just that laid out how often are we meeting, what's the pay arrangement, do both parties require liability insurance, does the supervisor have to sign off on the final paperwork if they don't think you're ethically ready to practice yet, you know, things like that. And so it's helpful to have a contract, even if it's somebody at your organization that's doing it, because that then gives you at least some documentation that that's happening. You should also, as an individual, be keeping a, I say at least a monthly log of your supervision records. So what happens every month where my supervisees, when they pay me, I sign off on a record. Ours is just a Google Doc that says we met these 4 days or whatever it was that month for that amount of time, and then I just initial off. And that just, again, gives you, as the limited licensee, a backup just in case anything happens to your supervisor. Because all that is required of the supervisor once you finish your hours is they're going to have to fill out this 2-page verification form. It's called the supervision verification form, and it basically just says, I, as a supervisor, worked with this person from this date to this date for this many hours. And as long as that hours adds up to those 4,000 hours of work, you're good to go. And you can have multiple supervisors. You know, if you switch jobs, if your supervisor leaves, if you just don't have a good relationship with your supervisor, whatever the reason is, you could have 5 supervisors during your 4,000 hours. That's absolutely okay. But each one of those supervisors would need to fill out that verification form independently. And what I recommend is, especially say you've only got 1,000 hours done and then that relationship ends with that supervisor, have them complete the verification form then. Don't wait till all 4,000 hours are done, because we know that people like go MIA. Like they may move, maybe they've been terminated from a job or you've been terminated from a job, and sometimes agencies want no contact with people after they leave, or the individual doesn't want any contact. And so that's sometimes when having those monthly documented sign-off sheets can really be a backup for you as a new professional. Because I will tell you, I got a call just this week from a limited licensee who has completed their hours, but they left an employer like 6 months ago, and that employer and that supervisor is refusing to sign any paperwork for them. And what do you do if you've worked somewhere for all of your hours and now you have no backup documentation? And the organization is not willing, nobody at the organization is willing to say that that happened. And so that, again, is just a safeguard for you, that contract and that weekly or monthly log, that just gives you some backup if a worst case scenario happens. So I see a question from Matthew in here. What do weekly meetings typically consist of with the supervisor? What is said, asked, etc.? Great question. So this is really where it's almost, and for most social work supervisors I've talked to, it's like your professional therapy as a social work professional. So you're going to talk about cases. You know, I had this hard case this week. This was what happened. This is how I handled it. This is the paperwork that was involved. But honestly, most of my conversations with limited licensees are, you know what? I had this difficult personality to deal with this week at work. You know, I've got somebody that's not getting along with me at my employment. And I'm sure you probably get this as interns too. Not all organizations have drama, right? And so how do you navigate that drama? How do you as a new social worker move up the chain of command? Maybe you want to ask for a promotion or ask for a raise. How do you do that in a setting? How do you, you know, it's been a crazy political year. How has that been addressed at your organization? Or how do issues around race and racism infiltrate your organization? You know, sometimes you want your supervisor to not just be talking about the nuts and bolts about your cases, but really about the larger systemic issues that you're surrounded at. And sometimes, honestly, that can be really helpful when your supervisor does not work at your agency, because they don't have any buy-in. Like for me, I've never stepped foot in where my supervisees work. I have direct relation in terms of what they're doing, but like there's no personality conflict with me. I don't know the people that they're talking about. And so that can be really helpful to have an outside supervisor. But for most social workers, you're going to get somebody for free that's provided to you through your organization. So you want to make sure that that's somebody you're comfortable talking about. And if maybe your supervisor isn't bringing those things into the conversation regularly, you may have to be a little bit more of a self-advocate around making sure that those are critical conversations. Even you want to make sure that your supervisor knows about the licensure process. They maybe have some ideas around how to pass the exam, or if they don't themselves, they have some connections to get you that information. You also want to be talking about things that change in social work world. So did the continuing education rules change? Is the licensure, like the licensure exam, those things are changing coming in June about when you can take it. You want to make sure your supervisor should be in at least some loop of information around social work world. And so hopefully they're bringing some relevant information about what's going on in the rest of social work back into your supervision meetings. So that's really what that particular relationship should look like. And if it's free, that's great. We want it to be free or cheap. But, you know, if you're contracting somebody out, supervision on average ranges from about $40 to $50 an hour. So if you're doing about 100 hours a year in supervision at $50 an hour, you know, that's $5,000 over the course of the year. And so it's really critical that you know whether your organization will reimburse that for you or not. Because even if you're paying $25 a week, you know, that's $100 a month. That's a bill. That's your phone bill. That's Sally Mae, and she's going to be calling soon. I know you were just talking about student loans. You know, we want to get this as free or cheap as possible for you. So knowing whether supervision is included is really critical before you accept a position in social work. And then the third piece of this process is passing the exam. So the exam is a 170 question multiple choice test that you take at a Pearson testing center. There are lots of sites across the state. And for everybody who's on this call, it's $260. Those are the master's level versions. So you will either be taking the clinical exam or the advanced generalist exam. Those are the two options if you're staying in Michigan. If you end up moving out of state, there is a third exam that is open for master's level social workers. It's just called the master's exam. We do not use that in Michigan. So if you see study materials that say master's social worker, that's not your test. You either are clinical or advanced generalist. Those are the two options that we have in Michigan. So that's just one thing to keep in track. You know, if you find a master's study book, it's not going to be like super out there or off the wall, but you want the thing that's most directly related to what you're going to have to take. Now, as it relates to when you should take the exam, this is going to be a little bit different depending on when you graduate. If you are a December graduate, get your exam done as quickly as humanly possible. So there is a change nationally that every state is now going to be in compliance with. Starting July 1, you have to have all of your hours complete before you can sit for your exam. As of today, you do not. In Michigan, you can take your exam without any hours complete. The general consensus in Michigan social work world is you should take your exam sooner rather than later. The test really is more, it's less practice-based than academic-based. because the exam really covers every area of social work, right? It covers theory, it covers psychopharmacology, it covers ethics, it covers management, it covers supervision. All of those areas of social work are encompassed, whether you're taking the clinical or the advanced generalist exam. And so I have found, if you can, get the test done as quickly as possible. For those of you graduating in May, you are going to be in a weird boat. Because like I said, it's going to take you probably 2 to 5 weeks after graduation to get your limited license. And only once you have your limited license can you schedule an exam. So if you're graduating in May, let's just say 4 weeks it took you. So that takes you to June 1st to get your limited license. That's probably a bad case, but let's use the bad case. So that would mean potentially you would have the month of June to schedule and take your exam, assuming that there are test sites that have space available. We don't know in COVID world what things look like. So sites are less, they have less capacity just because of COVID and the rules right now. And I would have to say, sadly, I feel like that's probably going to be the case even come June. Maybe we can cross our fingers that's not the case. But there's also going to be a larger number of people that are trying to get this test done, I think, before the deadline as well. So for those of you who are graduating in May, you're in this, you might be able to take it, but you might not, just depending on what that process, how long it takes. That's again why getting that initial application in a couple weeks early, at least getting that ball rolling. You know, then it's how long does it take for Wayne to finish up your transcripts? How long does it take for the state to process everything? And then are you in the financial means to actually pay that $260 to schedule your test? And are you ready study-wise to take it like pretty immediately after you get your limited license? So June 30th is the last date in Michigan that you are able to sit for the exam without having all of your hours complete. Once July happens, you'll have to have your supervision documentation in. Yeah, Nancy, I see your hand up.
I have a question. You just mentioned that the test is especially, I guess, within our state encouraged to take soon after you graduate. If that's the case, why would they change? I mean, I'm just curious. Why would they change? What's the reasoning for the change? That's
a great question. So ASWB's perspective from my conversation with them is they don't view it the same. They view it as this is a test that you do better with more practice experience. They have not shown any data that that's the case, but that's their argument. And they're also trying to have a national standard. So right now there are already quite a few states that require that you have to have all of your hours complete before you can sit for the exam. Michigan is not one of them. We like the way we do it. And who knows, maybe 10 years from now, we'll look back and hopefully have data that says, oh, that actually was a good change, but we don't have that as of right now. So we're trying to get as many people in as possible. But ASWB, they're saying, at least from their perspective, the exam is intended to be easier with more practice experience.
Okay. I've just talked to people and they've said that they wish they would have did it right away because like you said, textbook and your experience are two different things, and they want textbook answers, not what you're actually getting in the field. But thank you.
The tricky part too is social workers aren't always in full-time positions, right? Or on a full year calendar. So if you're a school social worker, you're not working 12 months out of the year, right? At least some school social workers are. So it may automatically take you more than 2 years to get all of your hours. Or, you know, we know a lot of times people take time off to have families, or maybe they're a caregiver, or they just needed a little break, or they're working part-time. And so it's going to take you 3, 4, 5 years to collect your hours. And that's a long time out of school for folks, especially if the last test you took was maybe like the ACT or the SAT, which could have been like already many years ago. And so we know in social work world, you're not taking a lot of tests in your MSW program. I don't think I took one exam in my MSW program. And so you'll want to, once you start studying, at least take a couple of sample tests, and we'll talk about where you can find some sample tests in a minute. But if you can, I recommend trying to get it out of the way earlier. I see there's a comment from Matthew in here. I had a teacher tell me that I can apply for my limited license before I graduate so that I'm limited license by graduation. No, that's not accurate. You can apply, you can send in your paperwork for your limited license. That's why I recommend 2 weeks ahead of time, but you won't get your limited license until your transcripts are finalized and sent to the state and the fingerprints are also in. So you want to get that ball rolling with the application in a little bit early, but nothing will be finalized until those other 2 pieces are complete. So for you May folks, sorry I don't have a better answer for you, but you're going to be in this weird tiny period where like likely you could probably get in the test before July, but it's only going to be a couple weeks likely that you're going to have from once you get your limited license to when you can actually sit for your exam. And that really, you may have to travel a little bit further if the testing site close to you is full and doesn't have a site available. And that also means that you'll probably, if you want to really try to get into that you'll probably want to start studying for this exam before you even are graduated or like immediately after graduation. And so there are some options for that as well.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How does this work if you're moving? Like I'm moving to Arizona. So would I start my licensing in Michigan? Are you able to be licensed in more than one state? Like, how does that work?
So if this is graduation and you're immediately going to be moving to Arizona, you should not apply for any license here. I would just look into the license or call NASW Arizona and see what that process is for new folks. Because if you haven't collected any hours, even it doesn't make sense for you to pay money here if it's just going to automatically go over to Arizona or a different state. If you've already collected hours or started that process here, then it may make sense to it's called reciprocity, is switching your license to another state or getting a license in another state. But for those new folks in the limited category, it really does vary state to state in terms of what that process looks like. Not every state even has what we call a limited license. So it really, you just want to, I would contact NASW Arizona. And if you're moving immediately after graduation, my guess is the process is going to be similar. You know, like you can probably apply a couple weeks out from graduation and it's going to be the same sort of thing, fingerprinting. And you can probably get your fingerprints taken here and just have them forwarded to Arizona. If you got an Arizona license and they allow you to take your exam right away, too, you could take your exam anywhere in the United States. Even with your Michigan license, if you were like, say, bunkered down, I don't know if anybody on this call is like commuting from a different state, but you could take your exam in a different state because it's a national exam. So that piece doesn't matter where you are, but the physical paperwork definitely varies state to state.
So I could take my license exam in Michigan?
It should, yep, as long as it's the same license or exam, like if it's clinical and clinical between here and Arizona, you could, yeah, it would qualify.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, so once you complete your, oh, sure, go ahead.
Sorry, I have a question really quickly. So I actually did move out of Michigan and I've been gone for about a year, but we're actually planning to move back next year. So my question to you is, although I haven't moved back yet, am I able to take the exam prior to actually moving back? I'm not sure if you've already kind of answered that or if this is just weird, but it's kind of like just a weird situation. I wanted to know before
if you're in
planning.
Yeah, if you're in a different state, but you are going to have the Michigan LLMSW, as long as you have the Michigan limited license, you can take the exam in any state.
Okay, got it. I do have it. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so I want to move through a couple more things because I know we're got about 10 minutes left and I want to get to a couple of sample questions. But once you complete your hours, your supervision, and your test, whenever that process is done, you will have to apply for your full license. So that's another $43.20, and your supervisors will have to send in the verification form. Your limited license is on a 1-year renewal. You can renew your limited license 6 times. So that gives you roughly 7 years from when you first got your limited license to finish your hours, your supervision, and your test. You do not have to renew your limited license every year. So if something happens and you're not working, or at least working in social work jobs, do not renew your limited license because that just will suck up your hours. because you only get those 6 renewals. If you go that 6th renewal and then have not finished your hours, your supervision, or your test, you cannot get licensed in the state of Michigan. You're like done. You could move to Ohio and then start their licensure process and then maybe get reciprocity in Michigan. But at least in terms of the Michigan, that's like a cap of time, because that is plenty of time to complete your hours, just because they do not require that you do it consecutively. So if you worked for a year and then needed to take a year off, you could do that, and then you would still have 5 renewals banked up for whenever you come back into the social work field. So just make sure that if you're not working, you're not renewing and paying. That's $25 per year that you renew that. Once you get your full license, that's on a 3-year renewal cycle, and that's when your continuing education will start. So your full license, you'll have to do 45 hours of CEs. As of today, it's 5 ethics, 2 pain management, and the other 38 are whatever you want to take. There will likely be in the next year 2 human trafficking training also added to that CE requirement. And then that training piece, that's the 3rd bullet down, will be gone because it will be added as continuing education. But you do not need, as a limited license, to have continuing education, only once you're fully licensed. I will say with that, if it takes you all 6 renewals or 7 years to get your limited license, please take continuing education, just because a lot changes in social work world in 7 years. Once you get your first license, whether it's clinical or macro, you can get the 2nd designation. It's half the requirements. So 1 year of full-time work, or 2,040 hours roughly of work experience under supervision, and you have to take the 2nd exam. So it's just half the requirements if you want to add in the 2nd designation. Okay, so that is the process. Let's do a quick and happy and sad face financial recap, because I think this is also really critical to know. So as you are, the cheapest way to get through this process is you're going to have the initial application of $43.20. You're going to have your $75 in fingerprinting. You're going to at least have to renew your limited license 1 time, which is $25. And you'll have to take the exam 1 time, $260. And your final application of $43.20. Now, this happy face is meaning that supervision is included, that you did not pay for any sort of a licensure prep course, and it's just taking you 1 renewal of your limited license. So if we're in that boat, it's about $450. So over 2 years, that's not like a terrible amount, because most of them are smaller chunks minus the exam. The exam is a large chunk of money. That's why we want to just get you to take it 1 time. But as you can see on the right-hand column, that number can go quite high, quite quickly, depending on some factors. So you still have your application and fingerprinting. If you have to renew all 6 times of your limited license, it will be $150 instead of $25. Your exam is times however many times it takes to take it. On average, it's 1 time. So remember that in the back of your mind, but it does sometimes take folks more times than 1. If you want to take an exam prep course, I'd say on average, they're going to range somewhere between $150 and $300 for that material. And then supervision, that's going to be really the X factor during this whole process. Because if you're, again, paying $50 per month for all of your supervision, it can be about $5,000 over 2 years. There are some social workers that charge about a clinical hour for supervision, which is about $100 an hour, and that's going to be $10,000 over 2 years. If you are a limited license paying out of your own pocket, please do not pay anybody $100 an hour for supervision. That's just crazy amount of money for you as a new professional repaying. And likely you're not going to be making enough money to even be able to pay somebody $400 a month. I mean, I'd love it if you were. Maybe you will. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed for that. But if your employer is reimbursing the cost for supervision, absolutely your supervisor should get a higher amount than maybe you could pay out of your own pocket. Because that's generally, they're providing a service for you and also taking 4 hours a month away from whatever their other job is to do that. So supervision, you really need to know whether that is included or not before you should accept a position, because you may not, you don't want to start a job and realize that I can't afford to pay this out of my own pocket, and so maybe this isn't the right job for me, and I shouldn't have accepted here. So I always, before you get into any, if you accept a position, know about the supervision arrangement for that. Okay, so just I know we only have a few minutes left, so I just want to talk quickly about a couple things related to the exam. It's a standardized test, so it's not super fun. I'll just be real with y'all. I took it. Everybody who's taken it will probably give you the same answer. It's crappy. It's 170 multiple choice tests. You want to be done with it as quickly as possible. Like especially if you have test anxiety, you know, that's usually the thing that really holds people up during this particular test, is if that's something that you struggle with. And so if that is something that you know you have difficulty with, is U of M has a really good test anxiety center. And so we recommend people check them out. That's one of the few resources in Michigan that specifically looks at test anxiety, because you don't want to have to pay $260 more than one time. And if that's the thing that holds you up generally, you know, usually you can get a couple courses or some strategies through a place like that. But know that it's a national test. You'll take it on a computer at a Pearson testing site. You'll choose what specific location and time you want to do your test. Times are all throughout morning, noon, nighttime. They have tests on the weekend, so there are lots of options available. Each test is 170 questions, but only 150 count. The other 20, they are like testing those questions to see if they want to keep them in rotation in future tests. So you don't know which 20 that those are. Hopefully they're all the ones you got wrong. But on your particular exam, you need to get roughly 75% correct. And roughly is critical because every test question is weighted differently. So your test might range from a 70% passing score to an 80% passing score, depending on the specific questions that are on your exam. You don't know what that is before you sit down and take it. So what I recommend is when you're studying, try to get 80% correct consistently, because that's going to be the high, probably the high end of a particular exam. You'll get 4 hours to take the test. If you need accommodations, please make that known when you schedule. They can have the test read to you. You can get additional time. There's various things that they can provide through the testing site. Probably, and maybe the best part of this exam, is you are notified immediately when you pass. And I'm just going to say when you pass because that's going to be everybody on this call. So you're going to get to question 170 and you're going to see that submit button in the corner and you're going to be real hesitant to hit that. I know I was. And you're going to think, okay, submit. And then it's going to say, like, are you really sure? And you're like, yes, I guess. And so they'll ask you a couple of times. And then because we're social workers, there'll be an 8-question survey or an evaluation. And so you'll fill out that evaluation. And then it'll tell you either congratulations or something like needs further study. So we're going to want to see congratulations on the screen. Either way, you're going to like cry or you're going to cry, depending on how it goes. You're just going to be like, I know I was like mentally spent when I was done with this exam. So if you can like manage to not work that day or like give yourself some self-care treat afterward, make it happen. But you are notified right then and there. The testing site will send your score directly to the state for you. You don't have to worry about that. If you do not pass, you can request a detailed printout of your particular score, and that will give you areas of improvement on. So I know I'm getting close to my time, but I want to just give you a couple of recommendations of some study materials. Keep all of your books that are related to theory, to diagnosis, and ethics. Those are probably the 3 critical ones that everybody will have on their test. Make sure you know where your testing site is because your time starts whether you're there or not. So you don't want to be late and realize that you've already spent a half an hour of your time. If your name changes in between when you registered and when you take the test, make sure that your ID matches because, again, they could turn you away if you show up for whatever reason. And maybe one of the biggest pieces of advice for this particular exam is if it doesn't say it, don't assume it. So there's going to be a lot of questions where you're going to be like, wow, I had a similar experience in my internship, or I read about a case like this in my class. No, you didn't. And really why I say that is they've determined that in only those 2 or 3 sentences that they've given you, that is enough information to answer the question. So you don't want to add any auxiliary information about an experience you had specifically that may feel related, because it's not. It's what would the generalist social worker do in this experience anywhere within the United States. And so that's again where I think sometimes earlier or closer to graduation, this will be easier, because the more practice experience you get, or the more in-depth with one area of social work, sometimes the harder this test can get, because you're going to be more focused on a specific area of policy. You're going to have your specific agency's policies in mind, which may be different from the generalist social work answer. I know Wayne is working on some study stuff. I'm not sure if they've talked about that yet, but you don't cram for this test. You're probably going to want to give yourself at least a few weeks, if not a couple of months, to get ready for this, because you just want to study in short spurts generally, right? I highly recommend grabbing a friend and having them be your study accountability partner. If you go and pay for a prep course, try to have another friend also do that, and then you can relay your experiences and what information you picked up from that together. Go into your app store, just put in clinical social work exam or advanced generalist social work exam, and you'll see that there are a few cheap options that are there, or some of them are free. Note that none of the apps are actually written by ASWB. They may appear that they're written by ASWB, but none of them are. So none of the questions on apps are exactly the same that you will see, but they're a good way to start at least getting a sense of some of the questions you'll see on there. And then, as you can see on the bottom of the slide, remember, you just want to pass. You just want to see that congratulations on the screen. It's not a competition. You usually don't get a raise for it. Maybe you will, sometimes when you go from a limited to a full license, there are organizational stuff, but you really just want to see that congratulations on your screen. We're hosting our virtual course in May. So for you May folks, this might be an option for you, depending on how you're thinking about this exam. If you're going to try to get it in before the end of June, this could be a fit for you. We also partner with a group called Pass It Pro. They're an online licensure prep course, but that's a good option as well. They do some more individual studying, so if you need that attention to focus on particular areas, I recommend finding a good platform for that. So there are lots of exam prep options out there. Find something that's reputable, because there are a lot of scammers that try to get money from folks out there too. So just talk to people you know. I'm sure folks you've graduated with in the most recent years probably have books that they're willing to part with or give you at a much discounted rate. But I know I'm kind of at the end of my time, so I don't want to go into whoever's next. Felicia, I saw your question. So if anxiety is something that you're worried with, U of M's anxiety clinic is a really good option there. You may also want to talk with Wayne. I'm guessing somewhere in their student services, they probably have some folks there on campus or virtually now who can assist with that as well. I'm going to be hosting another one of these sort of conversations in February. I know we ran a little bit short on time today to get through some example questions, but follow us on Facebook for some sample questions. There's also some on the NASW Michigan website, and I'll just quickly show that. So if you go to our website, if you go under member benefits, find a supervisor. There's also a list of trained supervisors, so if you have to contract somebody out by county. We also have templates you can use around supervision contracts, a weekly or monthly log, and then just some of the standards for social work supervision across the state. So that's a really good place to find some additional stuff on that. And then under our licensure area, you can find some specific resources on that, as well as some recordings if you wanted to get through some sample questions there. So I know I'm at time, but if there are any quick questions, and I know you got another person after me.
I had a question. If you're if you're in the master's program right now, can you still get a limited license BSW to cover your bachelor's degree, or should you just wait and do the limited license for the master's?
So unless you are working in a social work job that requires you to have your LLBSW, I would not do it. It's not worth spending any money because you don't need it during your MSW program. But occasionally, if you're having a job outside of your internship that would require it, then you may need to have it, but generally not.
And in order to get the LLMSW, you have to have your master's first. So is that why you
Correct.
were telling us, for example, if we graduate in May, to apply a little sooner so that hopefully we can meet that deadline, and possibly we could if there were enough time to test before the law
Yeah.
changes, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And here's my contact information if you need to get a hold of me. We're a tiny group at NASW. There's just 6 staff, so you know one of us now. If you're not a member, please join. We'd love to have you. We're also doing some giveaways for December, so we always have some sort of fun stuff going on. And if I was there in person, I'd be handing out some fun stuff, but sadly we're in virtual world. So congratulations on everybody graduating in December, and for those graduating in May, you're almost there. You've gotten through a crazy social work time. We're ready to have you in the field.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you, Dwayne. Thank you for providing this excellent presentation. You always deliver above and beyond. And it's okay that you went over. You know, quality is okay. When you go over, you got quality. So what we want to do now is go quickly into our next speaker, and then we're going to go into the giveaway, as well as answer any questions and provide extra resources for you all. So we may end at around maybe 2:05, 2:10-ish. So our next speaker is from the Office of Development and Alumni Affairs. And Kim Easley is the Alumni Relations Officer. So Kim, you can go ahead and give your spiel.
Thank you, Lawrence. I do want to second that, Dwayne. That was a very great presentation and covering all of the understanding about the licensure exam process. And I'll probably connect with you going further with the program that we are running, because that was really great. So again, I do want to also congratulate the 2020 graduates. This has been a wild year, but you all stay resilient. You pulled through. For those of you who are on the call who will be completing your degree in May, keep striving. You're almost there. Congratulations to all of you. Please give yourself and each other a round of applause. Like Lauren said, my name is Kim Easley. I'm actually a 2-time Wayne graduate, receiving my latest degree right after the pandemic hit. So I feel your struggles and things like that. I'm an alumni relations officer for all alumni and an alumni volunteer coordinator. There are a number of opportunities graduates can remain active with the university through alumni communications, events, and activities. I'm going to be adding some links in the chat box for you to keep handy and to add to your network contacts. There are opportunities for you to work alongside fellow alumni as executive members on our alumni committees, our councils, our boards, that will help you master your leadership role of reaching back and pulling other social workers forward. The Alumni Association is a non-dues-based resource organization with more than 265,000 alumni waiting for you, which includes 13,000 social work alumni. So there's a lot of people out there that you can connect with and, you know, get pulled forward, just like you should be pulling others forward that come behind you. And of course, my dog is in the background barking, so excuse that. That is why it's very important for you to keep in contact with us wherever you may land in your life, so that we can share the many great things happening now and in the future. That includes if you plan to move to another state, another country, if your last name changes, and or if you obtain a new email address. So again, I'll be adding all of these links where you can connect with us, become familiar with the main alumni website. your social work alumni website, or just the social work website. So they'll be posting things on there that alumni can stay connected. Stay connected to all things alumni. Use the Alumni Connect link for programs such as our Alumni Advice Project, where you can share your academic success tools and your industry experience to current students. We also have a Warrior Book Club that we just launched because of the pandemic and needing to go digital virtual programming. There's an alumni webinar series that covers a lot of broad topics that will help you in your career and beyond. And we also have an Alumni Pride Toolkit, which is some fun, family-friendly winter days activities, which will probably all be inside coming up. I don't know. It may be a wild winter as well. So please also stay active on any social media platforms that are connected to the main alumni website and the social work website. As I mentioned earlier, I am the Office of Alumni Relations Volunteer and Coordinator. So if you enjoy giving your time to your fellow community, I encourage you to complete the Warriors Together Alumni Volunteer Program Interest Form. I will connect you with volunteer roles that align with your interests, your talents, your expertise, such as the Social Work Mentor Program. And it was actually put in place to aid and assist new graduates to pass the licensure exam. Mentors are selected from graduates within the past 5 years who have passed the licensure exam, and mentees are selected from graduates who have obtained their limited license and are preparing to take the licensure exam. The program helps guide new graduates through understanding the exam process, guidance through test anxiety with our counseling and psychological services here at Wayne State, creating study groups and exam planning. And you can view the full details about the mentor program on the social work website. And I commend all of you for this accomplishment that you've achieved. Many congratulations. I wish you all the very best. Lastly, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach me directly. My email address is kim.easley@wayne.edu. I will put that in the chat box, or you can email our alumni association at wsuaa@wayne.edu. So I do congratulate all of you, and I think I am at my time. So I'll be putting those links in the website. Just make sure you copy those and keep them, like I said, in your network of contacts for resources to reach out to us for anything that you need.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Kim, for providing this information of how we can stay connected as alumni, soon to be graduates. The social work mentorship program, she mentioned that the information is on the social work website. We will work to get that in the chat if it is available, as well as do a follow-up email where you can get that information for the social work mentorship program for the ASWB licensure exam. All right, so we still have a good amount of students or individuals on this call, and you get an opportunity to receive this guide to the ASWB exam. So I have 3 questions that I'm going to ask, and whoever puts the answer in the chat first. So I need all of the staff to monitor the chat after I ask these 3 questions. It's regarding the information that Dwayne presented on. So the first question, get ready for the chat. The first question is, there are 170 questions on the exam. What percent, no, 20 are unscored, are non-scored. What percent must you get right? Go. Wait a minute. Who put that? Okay, so I don't know. Let's check out the chat real quickly. All right, so the answer is 75%. So you want to get 75% right, and it looks like the person who put the correct answer in was Brittany. So Brittany, congratulations. You will be receiving this. I'm going to figure out how to get this to you. I can't really, I don't.
Thank you.
So what I'm going to do, if you could email me. Do you have my email?
I don't.
Okay, let me put my email in the chat. All right, so I rushed that, but there it is. So I'm gonna send this to you. I'm gonna send this to you, and with the address and everything like that. The next question is, y'all ready? How much does it cost to take the exam as an MSW for the MSW exam, ASWB, MSW portion? All right, let's see who we have here. Who's our winner? So it is $260 for the MSW part of the ASWB exam. So it is $260, and the winner is Amanda. So Amanda, if you could as well email me, and we'll get this to the address that you have provided for us.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, you're most welcome. All right, so I'm out of questions right now. I want to do one more, so I'll be thinking about that as we move forward. But as for now, we want to take this last 7 to 10 minutes to open it up for our advisor, Jeffrey Jones, to do a short presentation on resources that you can use to move forward.
Good afternoon, you guys. I am going to share my screen right here.
Amanda.
Can you guys see my screen? Okay.
We can see it. Yes.
Cool. So first, I'd like to say congratulations to everybody on the line. It's been a rough, but like everybody else has said, you guys have persevered and saw it through. Everybody said everything that I would say. So ditto, ditto, ditto. But our social work job board and career services is what you guys want to check out. socialwork.wayne.edu/career resources postings. We post jobs daily. These are the most current 2 that we have. I just put those from the website, but Amar gets things all the time. I get stuff all the time, and we always post on the job board, so check them out. With career services, they do so many different things, and unfortunately, we aren't on campus for you to take full advantage, but you do still have options. So, like Vanessa said, update your resume, update your information. Career services can help you with career planning, campus jobs, paid and non-paid, full-time employment also. And they use this portal called Handshake, where you can network, find out postings about different things going on, different opportunities, connect about jobs and internships, again, on and off campus. So stay connected with career services. Lawrence is a strong proponent of career services where they will help you upgrade or edit, and he speaks very of them. So if you need your resume revised, check out career services. Our certificate and dual title programs. Moving forward into your MSW program, you do have options for certificates, grad certificates in gerontology, developmental disabilities, alcohol and drug abuse studies. I am still in that program right now, and a student who says, "Hey Sarah, congratulations on your graduation." Child welfare, research and evaluation. We have a dual title with infant mental health. We have a joint master's program with the MSW in social work and a master's in public health. We also have the Holistic Defense and Innovation and Entrepreneurship in conjunction with the Mike Ilitch School of Business. The other thing that you guys might be interested in is the temporary approval for school social work. So you guys need an additional 500 field placement hours. Well, you need 500 placement hours. It's not an additional. You have additional hours to make up an additional 500. You take social work 8180, 8330. You meet with Karen Weiner, who is our specialist for temporary approval. She will sign off on all your documents and get you situated for temporary approval for school social work. Scholarships, you guys. Get this free money. It's out there. If you haven't seen this already, pay attention. We have sent out a number of emails regarding the scholarships, regarding some emergency scholarship funding. If you haven't checked it out, please go back and look through your emails and follow through. We have some guaranteed emergency funding right now. I think there is some still available. So if you haven't, again, check those out. Our for the scholarships, and that's social work and university, is March 1st. Get on top of that as soon as you can, you guys. Oh, look at that. Like everybody else has said, stay connected. These are our social media outlets. Update your information, update your resume so that you are current and we can stay connected with you guys. Again, remember us, don't forget, reach back. There is always something going on, always a lot of different opportunities for you to participate in and stay connected with us as the School of Social Work alumni. So this is our information. If you have any questions, thank you guys for attending today. We know it's been a full semester. So you have myself, Jeffrey with the G, Miss Naila, Mr. Lawrence, and this is our website and the main number. That's it for me, Mr. Lawrence.
All right. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we've come to an end of our session today, and I want to give away one more booklet. So the last question, get on your chat, is, let me think about this. Okay, y'all ready?
Make it a hard one.
Okay. Okay. How many hours do you need to become a licensed social worker? Real quick. Wow, that was fast. That was fast. So we have a winner. We have a winner. And that winner is Caitlin Crawwell. So Caitlin, if you can again email me, and we will get this to you to the address that you send.
You know what?
All
to
right.
be fair, this was fun. Go to the second person because I'm a BSW student. I just felt the need to hang out. So go to the second person in a row.
You know what?
Thank you. You represent for the BSW. Hold that space, lady. No, you earned that.
Okay. All right. I'll take it. Thank you very much. I had a lot of fun participating today, and this was great information.
You know what? Since Caitlin was trying to, sacrifice some things there, we're going to also give it to the second person who is actually graduating this December and will definitely need it. So Isabel, you'll get one as well. So Isabel, if you can email me, you were second in line right here, and we'll get them to both of you all. So, okay.
Congrats, you guys.
All right. So we just want to open it up for questions. You don't have to stay on. It's totally up to you, but we will, myself will be here along with a couple other staff if you have any questions. So we're opening it up for questions.
I have a quick question. I'm sorry, I have a infant in the background if you hear her. Just so that I'm clear, so I have about, I'm short of about 88 hours of supervision. So can I obtain those hours through volunteering along with a fully licensed social worker?
I'm going to defer that question to our Office of Field Placement staff. We have a couple on the call. So go ahead.
Yes, you can, and sure, but Anwar, take it away.
I just want to make sure that we understand the question correctly. So you said you have 88 more hours to get to the 4,000, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, the state does allow you to do those on a volunteer basis. Again, as you said, as long as it's done under the supervision of a fully licensed social worker.
Thank
And
you
make
very
sure-
much.
Yeah, make sure that person knows that you're doing this for the license, and you might show her that supervisor form that she or he is going to have to fill out so that there's no question when it's time to ask them, so they know up front what they're going to have to do.
Yes, and thank you. It was very good seeing you. I graduated in 2017, so it was good to see you again.
Good to see you, Brittany. Take care.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Will there be a social work practice exam this semester?
We normally hold the social work practice exam on the campus within the School of Social Work building, but since COVID, that's not taking place. However, we will be having an opportunity for our students, and I'm gonna let my coworkers also explain this. We are purchasing the exam for, I believe, students and alumni, if I'm not mistaken, Anwar?
Yeah, so we're the dean is really wanting to support obviously both students and alumni. We're looking at the possibility of purchasing licenses for that exam that's in the computer lab. It may end up so that it may not be completely free. We may charge you a small fee. It won't be the full $80 I think that they charge. So look for an email. We're in the process of putting that together. We will send out information, and you will be, if you decide that you want to use one of those exams and you pay that small fee, you'll be sent an email where you can activate it, and then you'll have a span of time. I think it's like 90 days from the time you activate it, and then you're able to take up to, I think, 6 practice exams. So we're working on that. We'll send it out. We'll put stuff on our website. So look for that information, hopefully in the next month or so.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
So I have a question about the IPT forms for field placement.
You have a question about the IPT forms for field placement?
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, it was a little bit low.
Okay. So I have all mine in, but I'm still waiting for my field instructor to fill out the forms on her end. And I know you guys are kind of coming to like a deadline. I was emailed this Friday, they said no later. Possibility of like not receiving a proper grade. So I just want to make sure like to avoid getting it incomplete for the placement for this semester. Like what is that, like the absolute deadline? Where is that like a possibility that would happen?
Well, you know, we've all been quite busy these days with trying to navigate the COVID, right, and getting everything in. And I know we were trying to work with students, and I know some are wrapping up modules and things of that nature. I can share that all the field instructors have been sent out information and reminders to get everything in. And I just encourage students, as long as you've done what you needed to do and submitted and signed, you should be in good shape.
Yeah, because it was kind of up to her on her end. I signed everything I needed to do, but you know, I do have to sign off on like the final assessment that she has to make. And I sent out a couple emails. I'm trying to still communicate with her, but it doesn't. And I know they're busy on her end too. I'm not like trying to pressure her or anything, but
Have you also spoken to your faculty liaison, Matthew?
yeah, I emailed her a couple of times about it because that's initially who I got the email from in regarding the deadline. And I haven't heard back from a few days, which is a little out of character from her. So I'm just assuming that she is like going through a list of like hundreds of emails of people maybe in the same boat. So yeah.
Most likely. I think they're just wrapping up all that documentation and making sure everything gets in. And Again, as long as you've done, your part and you've signed those off, that's good to know. As your field instructors and faculty liaisons will be submitting those grades for all few hundred of y'all. So yeah, just stay in touch, and you've got those emails. So, and if you have any questions, you can always email me as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
I placed in the chat, where can I purchase the book from that you was giving away?
I believe in the chat we put a link. We'll post it again, and you can go directly.
It's right at the bottom. Yeah. If you go to aswb.org and you just put exam there, you're going to see different links, and just look at exam candidates, and it'll be on there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
You're welcome. All right. Any other questions before we wrap this thing up? Was this helpful? Did you all enjoy this time in the presenters?
Yes, this was very helpful. Like I said, I graduated in 2017, so a lot of this information I had either forgotten or didn't recall at all. So it was very helpful. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thank you for attending. Thank you for your positive words.
You guys, that means you have to do it again.
You need to. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, we're gonna go ahead and end the call. Please follow up on anything that stood out to you. You have our emails. I'll also in this in the follow-up email that you'll get the chat just in case you need the chat. But please reach out. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here for you. Thank you for attending the Classroom to Career event for December.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, translators.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, they do an awesome job.
Mhm.